So yesterday, we actually learned distributed version control system architecture. And I mentioned you need to commit in the local, and there will be a local repository. So it's not only the local repository, we need to understand local architecture as well. So I said you need to install git-scm. You should go to git-scm.com and install Git, right? So in the local, Git actually follows little extra architecture other than only commit. Let's try to understand that architecture. When I say local in the developer system, what exactly happens is the question. This is a working directory. Staging area, we call it as. This is local repository. And this is central repository. So this box, you can think of, it's a developer system. Dev system or wherever Git is running. So in the developer system, you'll have these three participants. When you install Git, this is what you get. Working directory, staging area, local repository. Working directory, physically you can see it. What does it mean? Okay, it's recording. So working directory is a project folder. Physical files, you can see it in the working directory. Staging area, local repository, physically you cannot see it. It's not a folder. Virtually only you can see it. Logically only you'll see it. Okay. Anyway, I'll come to that. But central repository. Yesterday, I have asked you to create one account in the Bitbucket. So that is used as a central repository, Bitbucket. In the Bitbucket, we'll be creating one repository that will be using it as a central repository. You have other options as well. It's not only Bitbucket. You can use Bitbucket, GitHub, GitLab, all that. Okay. For example, if you're using Azure DevOps, in the Azure DevOps also you have Git repos actually. Fine. It can be anything, but we are trying to use Bitbucket. Okay. Fine. But the functionality, the characteristics will be the same, whichever the one we use it. Either it is a GitHub or Bitbucket, doesn't matter. Corrected? The purpose is the same. Understood? It's just that the look and feel will be changed. Fine. Now, let us try to understand the local architecture now. In the working directory, you will be placing the files. For example, in this case, file 1, let's say I'm actually adding 10 lines of code. Where do you add it initially? In the working directory, because that's a project folder. There you will be adding the files. Then directly you cannot commit that particular file into the local repository. So what you need to do is you need to add those files into staging area first. Then you try to commit by taking the changes from the staging area. I'll explain why do you need staging area little later, but let's try to understand what exactly happens here is. So when you wish to add the files from the working directory to the staging area, you need to use a command called add. Command called add. When you add it, what exactly happens? This particular file one gets added into the staging area. Staging area is used actually for a temporary purpose. Temporary purpose. Fine. Now, I have this file chain in the staging area. It doesn't mean that in the working directory you are deleting it and keeping it here. In both the places you will have the file. Okay. Now, by taking the changes from the staging area, you actually commit it. So I'm saying C1 here. So, but commit is the command. Once you commit, what exactly happens is one commit ID will be created in the local repository, which is C1, and it contains file 1, 10 lines of code. As soon as this particular commit gets created, this will be deleted automatically. This will be deleted automatically. Now, why do you need this staging area is the question. Correct, right? For example, let's say you have 50 files in your working directory. I do not wish to commit all 50 commits. Sorry, all 50 files. I wish to commit only 2 files or 3 files or 10 files or something. Then what you can do, you can keep only the changes which are required to be committed in the staging area. Then using that you commit it. If the staging area is not there, how do you say these are all the changes I wish to commit? An entire working directory will be committed. Am I correct? So that's the reason we actually have the staging area. Understood? So whatever the changes you are keeping it in the staging area, that we call it as snapshot. Snapshot. Okay. So you keep accumulating the changes in the staging area. At once you actually commit it. Using the snapshot, you commit it. Once the commit gets created, the snapshot will be removed automatically. Is this clear? Okay. So now, again, if I am trying to add like 5 more lines in this particular file and file to like 20 lines of code, if I do it, see, when I try to add it, I can add one file or multiple files. You can keep adding it also. I can say like git add F1 first and again git add F2. Okay, each time when I add it, it is not mandatory that I should commit it. You keep adding it, later on at once, you commit it. This time, let's say if I'm trying to add both files at a time, then what will happen? File 1, 5 lines of code, am I correct? Only the change. Then file 2, 20 lines of code. Then when I try to commit it, C2 will be created. Then it contains what? File 1, 5 lines of code plus file 2, 20 lines of code. As soon as that is done, this will be deleted. Understood? So now, after you commit, how do I push these changes into the central repository? Central repository. This is how you do it. By pushing it. By pushing it. We already learned this yesterday also. Am I correct? When you push it, what will happen? This commits, these two commits, you could see it here. C1, C2. Is this clear? C1 and C2. Fine. But don't think that in the local repository C1, C2 will be deleted. You'll have the changes in the local. Also, you are pushing it to the center. Now, let's say now someone else is actually adding the commits. Some other developer added the commits. Let's say C3. Now, what exactly happens? Now, this developer need that particular change. Now, what exactly this developer should do? Yesterday you learned it. Tell me. There is one new commit in the central repository. I need that change. So what do you do? Pull, right? You need to pull it. So generally, pull meaning fetch plus merge. Very important to understand. It is interview question as well. Pull meaning fetch plus merge. You can use separately also. You can use git fetch, then you can use git merge. What is the difference? The difference is, see, if you are pulling, both will happen at a time. Fetch plus merge. But what is fetch? When you say fetch, the changes, you will get it only to the local repository. Are you getting my point? If I do the fetch now, what will happen? This C3, I'll have it in the local repository. But the related changes of C3 will not be available inside working directory. When you say commit, that commit will hold some changes, right? Some file changes, right? That changes will not be merged to the working directory if you are only doing the fetch. Then you need to merge as well. But if I'm doing pull, what will happen? Both will happen at a time. Otherwise, you need to do first fetch, then merge. Understood? But when you do the pull, both will happen at a time. Is this clear? No? Okay. Fetch meaning the changes, you will get it from the central to the local repository. Is this clear? Central to the local repository. So what does it mean? You will get the changes from here to here only. You will have the C3 here. But this related changes, you don't see it in the working directory. When you open a project folder, you don't see the changes. Some file changes, whatever will be there, right? That you don't see it. That you will only see when you do the git merge. Okay, so instead of doing git fetch, then git merge, you actually do what? Git pull. When you do that, what will happen? You will get the changes in the local repository. At the same time, it gets merged to the working directory as well. That's why we use what? Most of the times, git pull. Okay, you can also use git fetch. I'll explain you when exactly we use git fetch later. So for example, if there are any branches, those central branches I should see in the local and all, then we use git fetch. Okay, we'll learn that later anyway. Okay, fine. Now that is about the local architecture. So now there is a issue. What is that issue? I mentioned the staging area and the local repository. Physically, you cannot see it. Yes or no? It's not a folder. I can't open that staging area or a local repository and see it. Okay. Now, at any given point of time, if I wish to know where is my file, is it in staging area or is it in the working directory or is it only in the or is it in the local repository? Getting my point? How do I know? You use a command called git status. Git status. But if I use the command, it displays something. By using that, you need to understand. But how do you know? For that, you should know file life cycle. So let's try to understand that now. If it is a new file, you just create that file in the working directory. Am I correct? That will not be there in the staging area and the repository. Then when I say git status, it actually displays that file as untracked, or in other words, that file will be displayed under untracked. And it displays in a red color. Untracked meaning Git is actually saying that file exists only in the working directory. There is no track of that particular file in the repository. I am not aware of that particular file. It is not committed yet. It is nowhere. It is just there in the working directory. It is not tracked by me. That is what Git is saying. Now, when you try to add this particular file into the staging area, then this we call it as staged. What do you call? Staged. Then the file will be displayed as new and file name. And it will be displayed in green color. New and file name in green color. This is a staged file. Then after that, you commit it, right? Then this we call it as committed or unmodified. This will not be displayed, but it says the working tree is clean. At the time you can understand that this file is already committed. Understood? So this is how you will get to know where is your file when I say git status. This is for a new file. How about for an existing file? For example, in the case of file 1, let's say 10 lines were already there and committed. And again, you added 5 more lines into that file. Then in that case, how exactly it displays? Then for an existing file, this will be displayed as modified and it displays in a red color. When you see modified, that means this file is already committed, but again you modified that file. You might have deleted 2 lines or 3 lines, or you might have added extra lines, whatever. Correct? So then that becomes modified. Now you understood, right? Why am I saying unmodified here? Okay, so here it is modified. Then again you will be adding that change to the staging area. Am I correct? So at that time, it will be displayed as modified and the file name. And this will be in green color. Then it will be committed or unmodified. Okay. So it's not that you actually add a new file or modify an existing file. Sometimes you'll also delete a file. Yes or no? You'll also delete a file. So in that case, delete. So this will be displayed as deleted. This will be displayed as deleted. And in the red color, then again, this will be displayed as deleted and the file name in the green color. Now committed or unmodified. Even now you will be thinking that if it is deleted, why should I commit it? Correct or not? If it is deleted, why should I commit it? So in your project, you are deleting it. In your system, you are deleting it. But in some other system also, in other developer system also, it should be deleted, right? Yes or no? Now, if you commit here, then that gets reflected in the other developer system. Otherwise, how does it will happen? Even in the Bitbucket, it should get reflected. That file should not be there. If someone clones it, that file, they shouldn't be getting it. So that's the reason we should be committing even a deleted file as well. Is this clear? Okay. So using that, you will get to know where exactly your file would be. Any questions now? Anyone on this? Okay. I was talking about Bitbucket, right? Bitbucket is actually a Atlantacian product. It's the company name. So Jira and all comes from that only. Okay. Now GitHub is a Microsoft one. Microsoft one. Earlier it used to be open source. Later on Microsoft acquired it. Now it is actually a Microsoft product. Sometimes some companies thinks that why should I keep my code in their cloud? Even though it is safe and secure, but still some companies thinks in that way. Big companies, why should I keep my code in their organization, in their cloud, I would say. Then in those cases, they can use their own cloud or their own infrastructure, and they can use something like GitLab, and they can configure GitLab over there. Understood? Okay, fine. But anything, whether it is a GitLab or a Bitbucket or GitHub or Azure repo, doesn't matter. The characteristics will be the same. We use that to have a central repository. Is this clear? Yeah. Okay then. Now, what exactly we do? We will now try to create one repository in the Bitbucket. Okay, let's try to do that. Bitbucket.org. Now I logged into the Bitbucket. So here you can see workspaces. Before I get into this, you need to understand the hierarchy over here. Hierarchy in the Bitbucket. First, there will be workspaces. Under workspaces, you will see the project. Under project, you will have the repositories. Under repositories, you will have branches. Understood? There will be workspaces. Under workspaces, by default, whenever you create one account in the Bitbucket, one workspace will be created. Okay, so group of projects, you can have it in the workspace. Understood? So then under a workspace, you'll have projects. So under project, you'll have repositories. Now you should know the difference between a project and the repository. Project and the repository. In a project, you can have multiple repositories. Why is the question? For example, let's say I'm working for one project. Let's say it's a mobile application. Say mobile application. Now, mobile application, when you are saying mobile application, from where it gets the data? For that, you need to develop something called services. You will be seeing only the mobile application, but internally, there will be services also. And there can be sometimes a web application also. Admin can be using one web application, all that. So now you are seeing actually three applications or services. One is mobile app, and the second one is services, and the third one is web application. Client or customer is actually seeing only one, but internally you'll have two more. Yes or no? The services part, let's say mobile app they are trying to develop by using Angular or something, then Angular, React, whatever. It can be a native one as well by using Kotlin or something. But The services part, they might be using like .NET, Node.js or something. And for the web application, they can use a Java, .NET, whatever. So you cannot combine all three into one, can we? No, right? Because that code is different. This code is different. You cannot combine mobile application into the services and to the web application code. So you need to maintain three repositories separately. But all three belongs to one project. Am I correct? All three belongs to one project. So that's the reason you need to have the repositories. You can have multiple repositories in one particular project. Is this clear? Then branches. Directly in a repository, you will not be having the files. Definitely in a branch, you will be having the files. Are you getting my point? So why, you will understand it little later. Okay, I don't want to explain at this moment. So definitely I'll explain once you get to know like practically few commands, and when we try to practice it later on, if I try to explain, you will understand it better. But remember one thing, by default, one branch will be created called master. Under that branch only, your files will be there. Without any branch, the files will not be there in a repository directly. It will be there in under a branch only. Okay. So anyway, branch is a copy. I'll explain again later. Now what do? We will try to create a repository. So how do I do that? I go to Bitbucket. Now can you see here, project, repository. I can first create a project, then I can go to the repository. But what I am trying to do, I'm directly going to the repository. Here itself, I can create a project and also the repository. Okay. So if you are creating a project, then you can select that particular project there here while you are creating a repository. Anyway, so let's create a repository, create repository. Can you see the workspace? I'm getting it by default, this one. So you don't need to create a workspace, that will be there by default. Then the project. If you already have a project, meaning already the project is created, then under that project you wish to create a repository, then you simply select that particular project over here. But if you wish to create a new project, come down and you can say create new project. Then here you can type that particular project name. So as of now, I am simply saying vguide May 7/24. Practically, it will not be in this way, right? Practically, it will be your project name. You mention your project name. It can be anything, correct? Now, the repository name can be, again, if you are working for a mobile application, you can mention like mobile app something. If the repository is actually a service related, you can mention that project name dot service or whatever you can mention. Correct? If it is a web app like admin or something, you can mention. So it depends on the application which you are working on, that name you will be mentioning it over there. Fine. Access level. As of now, project name and repository name I mentioned the same, but generally it will not be the same. Fine. Access level. Private and public access levels. Private meaning only you can access it. And you can add other developers also. You can invite other developers, then they can access it, but no one else can access it. To whomever you are providing access, they can only access this. If I uncheck this one, then it becomes public repository. Public meaning anyone can access it. Okay. As of now, I'm making it as public. Practically, it has to be private. Why? Otherwise, anyone can access, no? That shouldn't happen, right? So you need to secure your code, right? You should not allow everyone to access it. Then your entire effort is gone, right? You'll be spending like 2 months, 1 year, whatever, right? That entire effort will be gone. You cannot make your repositories as public unless you are really like, you really wish to have it as a public. Sometimes people will be writing some blogs and all. At the time, everyone, they want everyone to access this particular code. At that time, you make it as public. But generally, when you work for an organization, 100% it must be private. Very, very dangerous if you are making it as public. Okay, I've seen some instances, but I don't want to explain that now. We'll do it later. But you have to make it as private. Include a README file. Directly in the central repository, you are trying to add one file. README meaning it's kind of a help, the documentation of your project. Okay, so I am adding it, but practically it's not mandatory. It's not mandatory because this time I am adding, the reason is instead of cloning an empty repository, I wish to clone with one commit at least, so that you'll think that someone else has created, you are cloning it. That's the reason I'm adding this file. When you add a file like this directly, one commit gets created automatically in the central repository. Okay, so I added this particular file now. Default branch name. If you do not mention any branch name, it takes the branch name as main. But I wish to use it as a master. Okay, so that's the reason I mentioned here as master. Include .git ignore. As of now, don't include it. I will explain about this particular file. Definitely, it is important. I'll explain little later. Okay, now using this particular changes, you need to create a repository. Clear? Fine. Any questions in this? Anyone? Project name, repository name, access level as public. Include README file is your wish. If you include it, you will get one commit. If you don't include it, there won't be any commits. Then default branch name, I'm making it as master. Include .git ignore no as of now. Now I'm creating the repository. Make it as public. If you uncheck, that would be public. Public or private. I explained in thoroughly, like in detail, right? Private meaning what? Exactly. Public meaning? That's it. Okay, fine. Anyone can access if it is public. Now it's created. What got created? A repository got created. Now you can see this is the README file which we have added. And I can go to the commits. This is the commit ID which is created just now. And this holds the README file. Okay, fine. And the branches, there is a master branch. Clear? And this is the source. Now what exactly I should do now? I should clone this. I should do what? Clone. That is what I mentioned yesterday, right? If you remember, I should do what? Clone. When you do the clone, what will happen? Initialization, connection plus pull I mentioned. So how do I clone it? I should actually create one local folder now inside my system. So how do I do it? You can create one empty folder. Okay, doesn't matter. So now I am using this one, this particular project folder. Inside this, I am trying to clone my project. Understood? So take this one, and here what exactly you need to do? right click on empty space of this particular folder. Right click on empty space of this particular folder, and you can see something like git bash and git GUI here. This will only come if you have installed Git by using git-scm.com. Now, Git GUI. There are multiple ways by using which you could actually operate with Git. One way I already mentioned yesterday, you can integrate with your editor, IDE, Visual Studio, Eclipse, Visual Studio Code or whatever. That is one way. Okay. So as a DevOps engineer, you will not be doing it. Developers will be doing it. Now, you have an option called Git GUI here. GUI meaning graphical user interface. Graphical user interface. You can use this Git GUI, then you could clone it. Now you need to specify clone existing repository, open existing, or create whatever you can do it. You can do it. But we are not here to learn the GUI part. We are here to learn the commands first of all. Once you learn the commands, then GUI you can operate by yourself without any issues. First of all, your concept must be clear. Concepts will be clear only when you are using the commands. Getting your point? Okay, so that's the reason I am not trying to show you the Git GUI, which we are not interested on. But you have Git bash here. You can also use the command prompt. Git bash and command prompt both are okay. Am I audible now? Okay. Anyway, so let's start. I was talking about Git bash. Both Git bash in both Git bash and command prompt, you can only use characters. It's a character user interface, CUI. Okay, so what is command prompt? This is command prompt. Yes or no? Here you can only type the characters. Graphically, you cannot see anything. The same thing even in the Git bash also. But what is the difference between the command prompt and Git bash is, in the Git bash you can use Linux commands. Whereas in the command prompt, you cannot use Linux commands, you can use bash script. That's the difference. But the beautification will be there in the Git bash. What do you mean by that? I was talking about the untracked, all that will be displayed in red color, green color, all that, right? That you will only see it if you are using the Git bash. If you are using command prompt, it displays in only one color. That's the difference. Okay, but which one I am using now? Git bash. Use Git bash, then you copy. See, can you see here clone? Come here And there are two ways of cloning it. One is HTTP, second one is SSH. I am trying to use HTTPS. You also use SSH. If you are using SSH, one key called SSH key must be generated in your local, and that should be added in the local repository. Sorry, central repository settings. Then only you can access everything. But anyway, I'm using which one now? HTTPS. For that, you can simply copy this one. This is the icon to copy. Then you come here and clone it and enter cloning into. Now you can see vguide May 7, 24. Okay, now go to that folder. So there is a confusion because there are so many folders in this project, in this folder. But generally, when you create it, just create one project folder, only one folder you will be seeing it, which will be this one. Can you see this? vguide May 7, 24. Just open this and you can see the README file here. Now, actually speaking, I should get into that particular folder. So to do that, what needs to be done? To get into that folder, I can say cd vguide. Then what is the name? May 7, 24. As soon as I do that, you can see here master. What is master? It's a branch name. Now I am saying git log. When you say git log, it actually displays the commits. Displays the commits. So there is one commit which we have added in the central repository. Yes or no? So can you see now? There is a commit 26DA. That 26DA you are seeing here. Commits 26D4 whatever, right? And what is the message? Initial commit. That message you are seeing it here. And who has done it? This person has done it. See, when you say clone, I said three things will happen. Git initialization. I'm clearing the screen. How do I clear the screen? Control L. So three things will happen. One is .git folder will be created, but I'm not seeing .git folder here in this folder. How come? That is hidden. That is hidden. So how do you unhide it? You know, right? You can go to view and you can unhide it. Am I correct? So the folder unhide, you know, right? I'm not doing now. You can do it, but I'll show you in a different way, which is ls-a. It is a Linux command. It will actually display even hidden files and folders as well. Can you see here? There is a .git. I can even get into that .git. cd .git. Can you see now? There are so many files and folders. But you are not supposed to modify anything on this. So just come back, cd ... and you'll see only readme.md. ls is again a Linux command. Clear? Initialization is done. And second one I mentioned as connection, right? So if you see this git config, I'll explain again what is this git config tomorrow. Git config -- list. Can you see here? Remote origin.url. This is the URL which is your git URL. This entry got added here. So that means connection established. Yes or no? Then say Q to come out of it. Then pull anyway, we understood. When you say git log, what has happened? You have seen the commit. That means that commits got pulled. All three happened when you do the load. Initialization, connection plus pull happened. Is this clear? Any questions? Huh? If you are, do one thing, go through the recording again. Okay. So still, if you have any questions, so see, sometimes 100% in the class you don't get it. Okay, you might get 30%, 40% or something, but if you go through the recording, you will get little more extra. Okay, still if you have any question, you can definitely come back to me. Okay, so that's what initially in every class I'll be first asking the questions like, do you have any questions? Okay, I'll clear that, then only I'll move to the next topic. Fine. Yeah. Okay, so all newcomers, meaning you three actually, I mean like all of you, I want you to send your email IDs first of all. I don't want to send the recording daily on the WhatsApp. I'll be creating a Slack channel as I mentioned. So you send your email IDs. So today I got yours, but other two, okay, you even like whoever has attended online, I want your email IDs so that I can create a Slack channel and I can send the recording daily basis in the Slack channel. Okay, this is the Slack channel. So all the recordings generally I'll share it here. I'll explain again tomorrow, but today I'll send it in the WhatsApp, but tomorrow I'll show you how to access this. Okay, but today at any cost you need to send an email ID. Okay, fine then. Okay, any questions, anyone? Okay, fine then. Tomorrow we'll resume the session again at the same time. Okay, fine. So yeah, others, please join back. I'm ending the session, so please join back. Okay, thank you.